Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's a Monday morning, so it's Mitush Monday. I have the coffee going. It's Monday, so we have Grumpy in action over here, and we have tea, water. What we got
Water,
going there?
agua,
We're
just
back
water.
to water, so going back to being too lazy to make tea. I see.
Also, I woke up 6 minutes ago. I didn't have time.
I kind of like figured. I thought you were gonna bail on us as always, but no. Alan is with
Bail.
us. Alan is up and early. And he's actually like an hour ahead now that I think of it too. But okay, so a lot to get to on a Monday. Obviously, the boys are finally back in action, so we'll start with that. Work our way into the World Cup from there. I don't know how much of the game you got to see yesterday. I mean, how do you approach these? Like preseason, mid-season, preseasons, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's weird to have a friendly in the middle of the season. It's I can't remember the last time that was something that I woke up for and was like, oh, this is exciting. It's not like there was a big break, in the summer, and then you want to see the boys again. This was more like this is happening right now. Like I didn't even realize it was happening, and then once it went into penalties, I was like, what is going on? I didn't understand the rules, and then the announcers kept saying, "Well, there's going to be penalties." Like, no, it's not. It's 3-1. What are you talking about? And yeah, so that was fun to see them not win the penalty shootout either. But
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I more than like the performance normally in a preseason, right? Like more than the performance, you're probably looking at, who's out there, you're looking at the new guys and stuff like that. That's kind of like the preseason mode, and you don't really care as much about the results nor the performance initially because you got to figure, oh, they're working back into shape. That's what's more important,
yeah,
actually what the practice is important. But does this have a different vibe to you? Because it's not really preseason. I mean, we're going to be in action in 10 days over here in some big games and very important games. So does that kind of concern you more when people are not up to par, or it's still kind of like they're getting back into gear? And let's face it, like really the spine of the team is missing, and then like Fab, Van Dyke, and
yeah,
like Allison and stuff too.
yeah. I don't think there's too much to necessarily worry about. I think with something like that, you try and just focus on individual effort, I guess. And I know from what people said in the first half, things were going really well before Elliott got hurt. Or I mean, it was subbed off. Where no one's really said if he's hurt or not. It was just precautionary. So I don't think there's too much to worry about, given seeing that Lyon played most of its starters for most of the game too.
Yeah.
And so they played against a lot of the kids in the second half. And that's kind of when the game really opened up, was in that second half. So I don't think there's too much to necessarily worry about. You just hope that everyone gets through it healthy, right? Because we already saw with Luis Diaz that it's if there are any setbacks, it's going to really hurt, especially if we can't get anyone else in January. I know there's lots of rumors, but January signings, they can be hit or miss. I mean, obviously, any signing can be hit or miss, but the just for there to be a signing at all, I guess in January is more of the hit or miss because it's not typically it's not Klopp's preferred transfer window because he doesn't get enough time to work with the player, and there might not be many players out there who could fit right into the system right away and hit the ground running like Diaz did. So
And yeah, speaking of Diaz, that's probably like, like as we go into these mid preseason games, I was more looking into. I was hoping initially Jota would make it. Now he's looking like it's February, and then it was more importantly, like Diaz coming back and stuff like that. And now we find out, he's now pushed back another surgery, I think, and he's all the way back to like March now,
March,
which
yeah,
really, really hurts. I mean, we kind of like forget that before he got injured, he was probably our best like outfield player that we had, and so that really hurts the cause. So a couple of interesting things aside from that. Keita back in action. Our boy Matip back in action, going on adventures as well. But
yeah.
I mean, that was kind of expected. I think the Keita one is kind of like an odd one. Where do you stand on that? Because looking at over here, like Nabi, the things he said, like we were like, will he play again for Liverpool based on the situation? We might sell him and stuff like that. And so I don't know if this is just Klopp talk, but he's like, let's see. That's good. Nabi's first 30 minutes, I think, for a while, very helpful as well. Important position, important player. So that was, we should only use him for 30 minutes. I think against AC Milan next Friday, they're probably able to play a bit longer. Alan says, who's Keita? Exactly. So where do you stand on that? Is that just Klopp talk? Or is he just saying to potential buyers out there, he's ready. Next week, he'll play even more.
I think it's just clap talk because we did talk about a lot how we did not expect to see Keita in a Liverpool shirt anymore, and perhaps this is part of the team just showing the world that he is healthy and that he's available to buy. You know, like this guy actually isn't hurt anymore. He's healthy. He's running around. Look, he can dribble. Like he's got some moments here. We can put a price tag on him. It's not like you say it's like you put something up online for sale and everyone's like, oh, can I get some more pictures? And they're like, and you just sit there and you go, no, this is the only picture I have. So Keita is just like, these are the pictures now. He is for sale. He is working again. So, this is it. And I think obviously if he's able to play some sort of part in the next couple months, if he doesn't leave in January, great. Because we have in the past seen incredible flashes from Keita. We can't deny that there have been moments where he looked every bit of the player that he was in the Bundesliga that they paid 60 million for. But we also just have to understand at the same time that he's just been really hurt and we don't know if his head is necessarily still with the club, because from what we've heard, what we've read as well, it's tough to get the full story or anything, but it just sounds like he's not necessarily happy to be there either. And so it's one of those things where, maybe we just wanted to make sure that he's still able to run around and the world knows that.
Yeah, that's the kind of like the impression I got out of it too. I just don't see, unless, like you were saying earlier, if we're not able to do a lot of business in January and we're kind of like afraid of how the market is and with all the uncertainty going on in the background, I think it's a good time to get what you can and invest in something else, which there are a lot of names. So before we get to that, I guess the only other injury scare was Harvey yesterday. I noticed when they came for like a water break or whatever that thing was for a second, or somebody was injured out on the field. Like he was talking to Klopp, or Klopp was asking him, and then he comes out like 5-10 minutes later. I think they're saying, it was just a knock. It could have been worse and stuff like that. But whenever I read something like that, I'm always scared until I see the guy on the field again, because sometimes these knocks and it's not as bad ends up being it's only 2 months or something like that. So it's kind of concerning there. Like a week into it, and we've lost 2 guys.
I feel like with this club, anytime it's just there's a knock, turns into 2 to 3 months. But then when we see something really bad, look like something really bad happened on the field, they're back within a week. And we're just like, can you just make this more consistent or make us understand what's going on?
And that's the thing. Like going back to Keita, that's odd too. Like you're saying, he had his moments, and we've seen a lot from him. I think, like I say, it all goes back to we waited so long for him, we paid so much for him. So you compare him to a player like Thiago, for example. I think Thiago has the advantage of coming in with so much pedigree that you don't question anything, and anything he does, we're like, look at that and stuff like that. And he is. He's a joy to watch. Like kind of like Modric is, with Croatia, we say it all the time. Like certain players are just like a joy to watch what they do on the field, how comfortable they are with the ball and stuff like that. But then, like he's injured all the time too. But I think when we bought Keita, Thiago was more icing on the cake coming into that midfield. Whereas when we got Keita, he was meant to be the future of this midfield and the missing piece in terms of creativity and stuff like that. And we just have not gotten it. But have no fear, January is here. Rumors all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
So out of all these, I have to give it to the media. They did not run out of material till like basically the elimination rounds. The group rounds, they were able to pull up all these stories and stuff like that. Thanks to Ronaldo covering like half the papers anyway, half the time. But now that we're kind of like the number of teams are dwindling, they have to dig for news. So now you're suddenly linked with anyone and everyone. Like only people who make to the semifinals are eligible or something like that. But out of all these rumors, the Croatian defender, I don't know. This does not make sense to me because I don't see us spending that much in a position that's we're probably the most comfortable with overall. I know people are not like happy with Gomez and stuff like that, but I mean, you're set for a while. You have like Konate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like Enzo Fernandez, and more importantly, probably like Amrabat, who obviously like once the name gets mentioned, you watch a bit closer. Any of these names gets the Polish Prince excited? Do you're like give me more news on him and stuff,
Yeah,
or what happens?
many of those names sound exciting and feel exciting, and I feel like this January everyone's just like, yeah, let's go, Jude, Enzo, Mbappe, Marco Reus, Declan Rice, Amrabat, like let's go, like everyone's just coming in. I think Jude obviously would be the most exciting one. I don't know a single person in the world who wouldn't want Jude Bellingham on their team. And I think a lot of us in the Discord have talked about how exciting that could potentially be and how much, how valuable it would be to just pay whatever the amount is, because we've seen how much of a complete midfielder he is. We've seen what he's capable of doing already at his age. So if you can get him for, let's say he plays for 10 years, right? And you have to pay Dortmund 150 million to get him, fine. 15 million, you just kind of, you finance it out 15 million a year to make that happen, because you're going to make that up in shirt sales. You're going to make that up with trophies potentially. It's kind of, he's a generational midfielder that doesn't, it's a missing piece to a lot of teams. And there aren't a lot of clubs that are going to be able to afford him, or be lucrative enough for him to want to go there. And the whole time we've heard it's either going to be Liverpool, Real Madrid, and then we hear that his family really wants him to go to Liverpool. And so who knows if that's really what they're saying. I'm just going to say and argue that, yeah, it's because it's English and they want to stay at home rather than go to Spain. So Jude is the most exciting out of all of those. I just think it's the least realistic in January. I do, if anything, someone like Amrabat would make sense, because the Fiorentina is asking for 30 million plus some add-ons, which I think is a fair price tag for a player in January that you might not necessarily be investing your future in, but at least the next maybe 2 to 3 years, seeing kind of what happens. Not the same situation as Arthur, where you kind of just hope for the year rental. But at least it gives you maybe, because Amrabat's only 26, 27, I believe. So
I believe so. Yeah, somewhere around there, like mid-20s.
Yeah. So it's not, not quite a Liverpool signing. He's younger than 30, so that's fun. But yeah, it's. I think out of all of those would be the most. I think Enzo Fernandez would be awesome, but I don't know if there's much meat to that. I feel like there's more truth to the Jude than there is Enzo.
Yeah, you really. I actually,
even though they keep saying that,
I think there is more obviously history, so there is more potential that somebody has said something at one point, or Hendo or Trent or whatever. Like this has been talked before. The Enzo thing, yeah, it kind of like comes out of nowhere. Same thing with Amrabat. Obviously, if it wasn't for the World Cup, like I don't think anybody is gonna pop up in one of these Facebook groups and it's like, we should get. There's a dude in Fiorentina. Like I don't think that's happening. And the dude has. Here's the thing. I mean, he's obviously the defensive midfielder. He would be more depth for Fabinho, which can be very, very useful, because we've seen Fabinho wear down as the season goes down. And let's face it, that midfield and that press, Fabinho plays a huge role in it. And when he's not himself, we really, really struggled. I mean, I talked about earlier about the spine of the team. And when you have, like Fabinho, who's part of that, not his best or actually poor, it kind of like affects the whole thing. Speaking of Arthur, Alan says Liverpool receive Arthur injury boost. I don't know if take that as like a boost, but new end of the month time scale.
New signing.
He's going to be like a new signing. I don't know. I mean, are we going to see much of him? I don't know why we didn't see much of him when we did need him and we got him as an emergency. And then obviously he gets injured and stuff like that. And I don't know. I guess you can hope for the best, but aside for some like League Cup appearances and stuff like that, I really don't think we see him as much. But yeah, the whole Amrabat thing is an interesting one to me. Fernandez is another interesting name. Kind of like you're saying, I think at this point we need depth. So really don't care the names. If you guys like them, go for it. Like, I'm good with it, kind of thing. I mean, if we're getting Enzo Fernandez, it's not because somebody saw him in the World Cup and be like, hey, Google this guy, and then
Right.
like we just like find out more about it. So we
Right.
would have been watched them. I don't know if that would be the same case for Amrabat. I mean, I don't know if he would like his name would come up and be like, hey, will we be a new field? And obviously then you look more into it. Everybody has scouting info on them available for access and stuff like that. Or I'm sure we have a dude in Italy who's been watching him for a while.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested in it, that's for sure.
I feel like we, I don't know if someone in the Discord shared it or if I came across it online. There was some article about how Liverpool has been looking at Amrabat before the World Cup. And so and granted, it's easy to say that because you could have, like you said, you could have people in every country looking at anyone, because that's the whole reason that you have scouts across the world is because they're looking and they're watching, they're making sure they're trying to find the next person to bring in. So I think the thing with Enzo, I feel like Benfica want a lot for him. And I don't know if spending, let's say, 80 to 100 million on Enzo makes more sense than just spending the 150 on Jude. I think, and that's why I think I feel more confident in the Jude one than the Enzo one, because I don't know if that amount would justify Enzo over Jude, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I do get what you mean. I don't know. It's like an interesting one because we do so much business with Portugal and Portuguese teams. So that makes it realistic in that sense. And how well they fit into the system has to be encouraging. And how many people they will have to connect with on the team would also be interesting, with like Nunez, Diaz and stuff like that. So, and obviously you have like a huge, like a Brazilian click going over there.
They speak the same language, so it helps, honestly.
Yeah, so I mean, that could be another reason. But I would think, like I say, if his name pops up, it's been because, we've been watching him before when we were checking out Nunez. They're like, hey, by the way, take a look at this guy too, kind of a deal. But like I say, at this point, depth is good. Let's go back to the World Cup over here.
Yep.
And you are Mr. World Cup predictions. Well,
no,
usually the ticker. Was that no? That was 2 Mondays ago. To your credit, or was that last Monday that we had your?
That was 2 Mondays ago.
That was 2 Mondays ago.
Yeah.
We had the ticker for you to being the number one in the pool. Those days have changed, my friends. So while looking at it, here is where we're at with the huge pool right now. Who is that Turkish stallion? Oh, that's right, that's me. So, and honestly, at one point. Basically, I think it's pretty much guaranteed now that I'm like gonna win this thing. But at one point, I think it was the Netherlands-Argentina game that was going to be the tiebreaker between me and Ainge. So, good thing I don't have to hear about the first lady over here saying stuff afterwards. She won. She doesn't talk trash afterwards, but she's competitive as hell, to the point where she was even at one point rooting against the U.S. because she had picked Netherlands to go further, kind of a thing. So she's competitive, but she just doesn't talk as much trash as I do, like I am doing now. But I did find myself literally rooting for Netherlands despite losing the pool at that stage, just because I kind of wanted them to advance more. And really, Argentina managed to make themselves a very unlikable team. Just sick of hearing the Messi thing overall. I'm sure there's a lot of Messi fans listening. They're like, here's my boy. But, you can have your boy. Ronaldo crying. I would have just loved to see Messi crying and walking away too, so we can just focus on the game. What do you make of obviously, we're going to get a chance to talk about the quarterfinals. I mean, obviously, a lot of shockers in there. Some really good games overall. Nothing was like a blowout. What do you make of it? Like, what is your biggest takeaway, out of these 4 games?
Not necessarily. I mean, I had Morocco in the semifinals, so that's my claim to fame. I may be third, but I have Morocco in my semifinals. So I think what we saw
that's actually like a ridiculous call, by the way. So
I know.
Kudos to you on that.
I should have put money on it. Granted, I had them there because I thought they'd play Switzerland, and I thought they would take care of Switzerland. But then in my head, I was like, well, if they could beat Switzerland, why couldn't they beat Portugal, who also just lost to Switzerland? So I don't know why I picked Switzerland. But it was fun. It was nice to see them. I don't know if they have enough to get past France. I think that'll be a really fun. I think both both should be pretty fun. But going back to quarterfinals, I don't necessarily. You mentioned already kind of the disappointment in seeing the ending of the Argentina-Netherlands game and how graceful the Argentinians were in their victory. Is really disappointing to see that on that level, just because it's one of those things where both teams understand what it takes to get to that point, and I don't think that either one deserves to act like that in front of the other. And I get that, adrenaline is high, tempers can flare. But after a game, in the middle of the game, whatever, but after the game, not to have that sort of that gamesmanship, that sportsmanship, the decency, kind of just really soured the entire moment, like you mentioned. And maybe now we just wait for Messi to lose to cry in the final. I mean, because that'd probably be worse for him than to lose in the quarterfinals. So Croatia, not necessarily surprised given what they did 4 years ago. They play a certain way for a reason, and it works. There was someone on the Liverpool supporter site that was complaining about how Croatia plays for penalty shootouts and that they don't play football, and they play ugly football. Brazilian fan, obviously. But
shocker, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, they understand the players they have. They understand who they're playing, and they played the way they wanted to play. It's not like they crawled, all the way through 90 and got lucky. They had to get an equalizer. They for all things considered, it looked like it was lost. After Neymar had that goal, I thought to myself, okay, this is done. There's no chance. That was kind of like the last punch that left all the air out of Croatian fans and then the team. It's like there's no coming back from that. And so you have to give them credit for playing back into the game. And for whatever reason, Brazil was trying to still I don't know, they didn't have anyone back for that goal. And it didn't make sense to me. So I think
it was very naive, wasn't it? Like you were like, dude, just like wrap it up over here.
Yeah.
But I think that's what gets Brazil all the time, that naive way of just kind of like constantly pushing forward, trying to be fancy, get another goal.
Yeah. The Samba way can hurt sometimes. It's just it, and so that's kind of what bit them in the mud. And we've seen that Croatia's really good at penalty kicks, and their keeper this year has been outstanding. Or this tournament. I don't know how he is this year. I don't know where he plays, to be honest with you. So it's one of those things where, yeah, they played their game right. England and France, kind of expected. For me, I thought it wouldn't be as close, to be honest. But I think if Harry Kane doesn't sail that penalty, it'd be a pretty interesting extra time. I feel like eventually it would have gone into penalties, and I think England would have still lost it. So maybe it was better that, some people saved their legs a little bit. But
Leo is with us, and clearly he's rooting for being there. I can't blame him. But honestly, and here's the thing with the France game, we were doing with my brother, we were doing a live watch along for like the Turkish channel, and looking at it, we're seeing, it was like 1-1, and it looked like it could keep going like that. And you look at the benches, and obviously France has a lot of injuries, but there was, apart from Coman, who came in off the bench, there was literally nobody left on that bench who can come in and make an impact offensively. If they needed to chase a goal or anything like that, there was really not a lot of people on that bench you looked at and said, come and save the day. So it kind of felt like overtime would be more to England's advantage, because they were able to bring in people who, could bring speed, like Rashford and stuff like that coming in. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they had people they could bring to the middle of the field as legs got more tired to be able to do the running in midfield. So it looked like a more balanced bench that they could bring people from, and France did not have that. But then Kane skies the freaking penalty, and that goes out, which I know it was a penalty, the second one, but I think in the NFL that's kind of like an uncatchable ball, right? You don't call pass interference of that because it's uncatchable. It's like really bad defending. Who had like Hernandez had like a horrible day on that left-hand side throughout. Yeah. I mean, Saka was having fun with him despite not getting a lot of the calls. What do you say about the refereeing throughout? I mean, there were some horrific performances in some of the games. And I think that Netherlands-Argentina game, for example, was a total like lack of control for the most part that kind of led to that. And I agree, it's one thing to have that adrenaline going and you win and you're like in your face. but that's it, you know. Then I mean, like their celebration in the face of the Dutch were more. I think like child is something like you expect a 6-year-old to do, not like a
Yeah.
25-year-old pro to do. And yeah, I like I say, despite the pool, I was literally rooting for Netherlands towards the end, mainly because of how Argentina was carrying it. So Neymar in tears, Ronaldo in tears. Icing on the cake to me at this point would be Messi in tears, so we can actually stop
The Holy
gushing about
Trinity.
just like superstars and watch the game. But I guess Mbappe is still around. But going back to refereeing, like, what do you say about like what you've seen so far in these quarterfinals?
Yeah, it just feels so inconsistent. I think that's the worst part of it is that we all we ever want is consistency, and whether that's poor consistency or good consistency, as long as you get the same calls all the way through, which is going to be tough when you have referees that are from all around the world that referee different leagues at different paces of play
Yeah,
that don't necessarily that aren't used to the World Cup type of play, and so it's hard to get all these referees to call the game the same way. I mean, you think that it's kind of a silly statement to say that there's a book of rules of the sport, so how can it be so different? But we see exactly how it's so different, and I think a big thing that we have to discuss and nail is a foul on the pitch, anywhere on the pitch, the same as a foul in the box? Or should there be some sort of added malice to a foul in the penalty box to make the penalty worth it? Because penalties are weighed so heavily, especially in a sport where one goal can win you the entire game. The game can end 1-0 and that's it. We have to really try and understand are all fouls the same? Do they all get weighed the same? And kind of going back to the Mason Mount, I think if that happens in the middle of the field, I think that's definitely a foul, even if he is close to the ball or not.
yeah.
So same way as it was in the box. But for some of those, like when you're trying to clear the ball and someone sticks their foot in front of you while you're trying to clear the ball, I can see the gray area there, and I feel like sometimes it's a bit harsh. And I think maybe the sport wants more excitement and they want more penalties because, hey, look, there's a goal. I think they're trying to draw in these neutrals that don't necessarily watch the sport often, and they think the only reason you watch this sport is for goals. They don't watch it for everything else that happens on the field. So if you can get more penalties out of it, then you can get some more excitement out of it. You can convert a couple new fans out of it. And so I think that's the one thing is that we just have to find the right consistency and have those conversations so that we don't have any of these discussions where we're asking, why is this different than this? Or maybe just listening in on the conversation between VAR and the referee. That's been a suggestion. They did that in Australia, I think it was, where they had the VAR and the referee talk and you could hear it. Or actually it was the new football league in the States, whatever it was, whenever XFL, I think, whenever it went to a challenge, the booth would talk to the referee and you could hear what they were talking about and why they were discussing whether or not it was a catch or whether or not he was out of bounds or whatever the case might be. So I think something like that could also really help, because then we get to understand why they make the decisions that they make, because they're professionals, right? So they, in their mind, they think they're making the right call. So why is it the right call? And so as long as I think if we have that transparency, I think we can kind of start to understand and appreciate and kind of go past all this a little more. I don't know.
I think consistency is the key word. And I feel like there was, before these tournaments or before season starts, I mean, and I hate hearing it, like you hear it in American sports as well, where it's like, it's a point of emphasis this year. What the hell does that even mean? Like, that rule is more important this year. Like, I mean, who does that? So and I think in the World Cup, it almost looks like the point of emphasis was don't show red cards. Because I find it shocking that was the first red card we saw. And like in this round, in the quarterfinals, right? We didn't get any in the group stages.
There's one in the group stage, but he was.
What game was that? We were talking about this the other day. Cameroon?
Because he took his shirt off. And
yeah,
got the second yellow. So it was a formality, really.
Yeah, the Morocco one I thought was like a really soft red too, but I almost feel like because of that, That's why I think the Netherlands Argentina game, there were yellows flying everywhere afterwards. But it would just like some of these games get out of control a bit more, and some things that normally would be stopped and punished doesn't get punished, because really, if you punish it, it should be a card. And I feel like there's like too much going on, and that I kind of blame these before tournament meetings of what we're gonna make the point of emphasis this year and stuff like that. So it's one thing to say, hey guys, this rule, we're never calling it, but kind of like going out of our way to call it all the time or not call it now is weird. I don't know. I do agree with that. That was a huge discussion. What game was that? Was that the Brazil game? No, which game was that where we were arguing about the penalty call on the Discord channel, where it's something that Sadio used to do all the time when he was playing for us, kind of like put his foot in the last second before the defender can clear it. So defender who's actually doesn't see Mane or whoever is behind him coming is trying to get his wind up going and boot it out and kicks the player instead.
Yeah, I think it was the Brazil game. I thought it was Brazil and South Korea.
Could be. Was it like Richarlison? I think of all people.
Yeah.
I think that's why we were more against it, because it was Richarlison doing it. But yeah, like something like that. I mean, it's a foul in the middle of the field, obviously, because you're just kicking the guy instead of the ball, and your wind up is on you. And I still feel like, as a defender, yeah, you got to know your surroundings. You can't just be like, oh, let me wind up. Same thing, if you expect a guy to make his hands disappear, I don't think it's unfair to expect him to know what's around him and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it results in a penalty, which seems, we say it's a soft penalty, right? Or we say that's too harsh and stuff like that, because you're almost, well, we see otherwise in this World Cup now, but in most cases, you're pretty much awarding a goal. Or like an 80% chance of a goal at least by calling that. So, but I don't know a way around it unless you make the penalty box smaller or something like that, because you can't just not call it because it's going to result in a penalty. If it's a foul, it's a foul. It's kind of like a dilemma, but I do agree the consistency over the refereeing with quarterfinals, especially in the quarterfinals, obviously, because it becomes more vital, I guess, because it's more important. It's like do or die kind of a deal, but. So let's get to the semifinals here. So you had Morocco coming to the semifinals, which, like I say, I can't give you enough credit for. But having said that, I'm just saying, somebody's gonna win, and I guess it happened to be me. So Argentina and Croatia first. Man. Obviously, that's tomorrow. I know my heart says Croatia, but I'm having a tough time bringing my brain to it. But like I say, the heart is too strong. I just want Croatia to win overall. But then again, I don't know. Do you want a Croatia-Morocco final? I guess it would be interesting.
Why not? I mean, I think 4 years ago, some people were like, when it got to the quarterfinals and the semifinals, we were like, do you really expect Croatia to be in the final? Yeah, I mean, if anything could happen, really. If Morocco can take France for the full 90, and then possibly take an extra time and the penalties, it's anyone's game at that point. I think that's what it'll take from Morocco. I don't know if they're going to be able to win in regular time. I think they'll need extra time, and it's going to really hurt them because they haven't rotated their squad as much as other teams, and they've had this pretty much 13 guys that have played all these minutes. So I feel like they just might be too tired at this point to really make a difference against France. And I think similarly with Croatia, they might be in a similar position, because I don't know if, yes, 4 years ago they had the legs, but you add the 4 years to a lot of these guys. And I don't know if they necessarily have it. Modric, as amazing as he is starting to feel it. I mean, when he was taken off, not this last game, but the game before, during extra time, like that could have been the last time he ever played in a Croatian shirt. We're thinking, well, if this was 4 years ago, there's no way he's coming off, because he is the bloodline of that team. And so I think Argentina knows that Croatia wants to take it to extra time and penalty. I mean, obviously they don't want to, but they are willing to do that. So, because they know they can win penalties, because that's what they've been really good at the last two tournaments. So I think Argentina is just going to kind of play like they did against Poland, and just not necessarily where they're playing where they know that they can go through, but they just want to just score as much as they can. And so this is my show now. And so here's a fun little fact, guys. As we're talking about this, the Netherlands have only lost one of their last 19 World Cup matches. So yes, technically they drew, or the draws in the knockout rounds were. I took over the show. I took over the show.
That was part of my disappearing act, and I'm back. Okay.
Foul.
I can still hear you, though, and I do agree with you. Well, here's my question as we were talking. This is what I was thinking of. When you look at Argentina's games against Australia, same thing happens where they were up 2-0. It was almost like, all right, next round time. And then Australia scores, and then they go into the panic mode. Same thing happens with Netherlands, I think, too, in some ways, where they're like 2-0, and we're done here. I thought so, too, in both games.
Especially that late.
Goes in, yeah. I think we all thought that, okay, this is a done deal now. But then it's almost like the moment they relax, they get into trouble because they're not really that strong defensively. And when a team really goes at them, and as they load those boxes into the... Alan says, good show, Matish. Way to take over, man. Way to take over. For a guy who showed up 10 seconds before we went live, that's pretty impressive. But, does a team look at that and say, hey, man, if we really, like Croatia, if we really go at these guys, especially with big people in the box, they struggle. I mean, that was the biggest thing. Weghorst comes in. They didn't struggle against the pace of, Gakpo and Depay, but they did struggle against the big guy in the box. And Croatia has that. They have it in Petkovic. They had it in Kramaric. So does Croatia look at that and say, hey, we just got to attack these guys? Or do they say, this is the formula that works? We sit, we pick our chances, but we sit. We don't get too out of it.
Yeah, I think they revert back to what they've been doing. But they understand they might have a little bit more confidence going forward, knowing what they've seen happen in the tournament. And that's why I think Argentina is going to kind of keep their foot on the pedal this whole match. Because it's going back to what you've been saying. Every time they've let off, they've really let off. It's like it hasn't been just a slow, slight decrease. It's just been like hit a wall. They fell over, and everyone's passing them. So, yeah. and that's what kind of when I'm thinking about it, when I saw them play against Poland, that's kind of how they played. They just put their foot on the pedal, and they just played like that for pretty much 80, 85 minutes. And so I think that's going to be their best way of just taking care of Croatia and not wanting it to go into that extra time. Because from pretty much all the extra times this World Cup, there has only been one game where there have been goals, and it came in the same game. Right, it was Brazil and Croatia. Otherwise, there haven't been any goals in extra time. So teams, once it gets to the extra 30 minutes, we're not really seeing teams go for it. And so at that point, I think that'll hurt Argentina too, because if they're not going for it, they're getting a bit more hammered defensively, and that's when they're vulnerable. So I think they're really going to try and finish it as quickly as they can and not let up like they have been in the last two matches.
And France, Morocco, do you give them a chance, or even in your pool, you kind of bailed on them?
Yeah, I did. I bailed on Morocco in the semis. I give them a chance. Of course, you have to give them a chance if they've gotten to this point. I think it would be an incredible story. I can also see like just the insane amount of press or news or backlash on the other end, where they're like, well, half of these players weren't even born in this country. How are they even in the World Cup final? So like I can see that also come into effect, which would be kind of frustrating. But I give them a chance. I don't see it happening. I feel like France might just blow this one up. I think it'll be like a 3-1 situation.
I don't either. I kind of like even that Morocco game, I did expect more out of them. They can really come out of a press. That's something that they could do against Portugal. They can really come out of a press, and when they do, they are dangerous. So in some ways, you see that, and you probably don't go at them and give them that opportunity because they are good at that. But I still feel like, and, the goal, I think Alan was posting it earlier that he went to 9 feet, 1 inch, I assume, to score his winner. But let's face it, he could have gone 10 feet. But the goalie is not there because, with his hands, you would hope the goalie would be able to reach higher unless he's like Pickford with the T-Rex arms. And really, otherwise, they don't get that goal. So you don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I think so, France. So before we walk away here, well, you were the man of predictions. I was going to say you are, but I am. So next Monday morning when we sit over here and you show up 10 seconds before we go live, who will we be talking about as the World Cup winner?
France.
I think so too, and so does my pool. Which you know about that pool. If you don't, check out the ticker. Okay, just wait till tonight's podcast where I just.
It would have been Argentina had they not been the way that they were after they won against Netherlands. I was in my head. I was thinking, you know what? If Messi is able to get his World Cup, fine. But after that Netherlands match, no, I don't want it, and I will be happy with France repeating, which is the only reason why I didn't pick France originally, because I didn't want the same team winning again. So that's why I went with Brazil, because I felt like it's been 20 years since Brazil won anything. So maybe this is the year. So yeah, that's kind of. So I'm thinking France either way. We'll still.
I agree with that too. I was like neutral with the whole Messi thing until now. Ronaldo not so much. Neymar definitely not as much. But I was kind of neutral with the whole Messi thing until now. And I just hate how like broadcasting and the media gush over the favorites and kind of clearly root for the favorite because they had the superstar, whatever it is, all game. And then act like they're so into the Cinderella story too when it seemed like Morocco scores and stuff like that. It's like, pick a lane and stick to it, people. But yeah, I am going with France as well. I think it will probably be France-Argentina. It sounds like you never know. But even in that matchup, I kind of think France has the upper hand, except like I say, depth on the bench. That's the only issue that I see with France. But we will see. We'll see you next Monday. Thanks a lot, our Polish Prince of American Scouser over here and a man of past predictions. And we'll be back tonight live with our podcast at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7 Central. So join us then where we talk everything Liverpool and, of course, a little bit of the World Cup as well. Have a great week. I know it's Monday, but make the best of it. Christmas is right around the corner, people. Take care.